Welcome to the Dean's Roundtable podcast series with Bridget Johnson. Each month, we bring you game-changing conversations about K-12 education and leadership. Join us as top educators, field experts, and administrators share actionable strategies to transform your school community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Dean's Roundtable podcast. I'm Bridget Johnson, the founder of the Dean's Roundtable, a space created for student life professionals to connect, learn, share, and grow together. We are thrilled to welcome Wendy Skinner, a longtime friend of the Roundtable. Wendy's a veteran in student life leadership whose experience spans Dana Hall School in Massachusetts to King's Academy in Jordan. Through her roles as Dean of Student Life and Residential Life at institutions including Shadyside Academy and Western Reserve Academy, Wendy has developed expertise in building effective school-family partnerships. Today, we're tackling a topic that makes even the most seasoned educator pause: the parent phone call. What makes today's conversation particularly valuable is Wendy's unique perspective. She's both an experienced dean who's made countless parent phone calls and a parent who's been on the receiving end of those conversations. This dual lens offers us authentic insights into transforming these often dreaded interactions into opportunities for collaboration and growth. Today, we'll explore strategies for challenging conversations and discuss how deans can approach parent communications with confidence and purpose. Whether you're new to student life leadership or a seasoned professional, this conversation promises practical wisdom for strengthening that crucial partnership between school and home. So let's dive in. Wendy, I am so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm just gonna dive in, and we're gonna talk a little bit about your journey, and then talk about these parent phone calls. So you've been in student life for a little while. Your journey's taken you from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania to Ohio, and all the way to Jordan, which is so awesome. What drew you to student life work initially, and how has your understanding of this role evolved through these different school communities and cultures over the years?
Well, this may sound cliche, but really what drew me to student life was the relationships with students. And then what I've come to appreciate over years is the relationship with the adults that also tend to the students and all the different ways our independent schools work. And it's sort of a North American concept, this idea of boarding school. I'm going to talk a little bit about boarding schools where um, the communities really are deliberately built and nurtured and developed, and healthy student and faculty culture is really key to the institution. And to experience that in another country in the Middle East where ways of rearing children, it's all cultural, right? Every
Yeah.
family has a culture, every school has a culture, and then a country has a culture, was sometimes almost at the same time very similar to what it is in the US. Like parents universally love their
Yep.
children. They pretty universally think their kid is the most wonderful human being in the universe, as you should. And there were some things that were strikingly different, and I learned a lot. So
Awesome.
I feel both that it is very universal
hmm
and very different.
So, how'd you even get into student life deaning, as we would say? Like, when you were kind of thinking about your career, is that something you always thought you wanted to do? Like, tell me about that.
Never. I didn't know it existed. And I feel of all, the career panels they have at schools, and
Yep.
there's always all these cool jobs like a DJ, marketing. There's never a dean of students. I've been
No.
waiting for somebody to say, like, I want to be a dean of students when I grow up. So I started as a French teacher. Um, and then I had taught overseas a little bit and then became an international advisor,
Okay.
service learning coordinator, assistant dean. And I really resisted being dean of students for a few years because of the association then with discipline.
Mm,
Like that was the role
yeah.
of the dean of students. And I think these days we call ourselves deans of student life or deans of student affairs, which sort of more accurately represents the global piece of our role. And that's, I think, related to our topic today, the dreaded parent teacher. That we do much more. And that is what, I think keeps deans of students going. Understanding the role of discipline in there, but not having that be the lead, or understanding how the other pieces, actually, the proactive sides of disciplining, are really paramount in deaning.
Absolutely, and they fit together so nicely. If you are kind of firing on all cylinders, as I like to say, those pieces really are so interconnected and so important to the work that you do every day. It's not just discipline, and if it was, I definitely would not be interested in that position as well. It's just that who wants to be negative all the time or be seen as oh, not the dean coming. Am I in trouble? I'm like, can I just say hi? Sometimes I just want to say, hi, how you doing? I'm not coming to, enact some sort of punishment. And so I really, I think a lot of deans work hard now to make sure that that's not kind of the only lens that people see them through. But I mean, that is a part of the job, right? It's something that you have to do. But one other question I have for you in terms of, the position changing, because I think it has changed quite a bit over the years, even since I was, a dean. What changes have you seen in your time as a dean?
I think a more deliberate um, philosophy or mission or vision of deaning. It used to be, I think, um, really people were hired and it was sort of like, oh, you can talk to kids, you have good relationships, why don't you be a dean of students? And there wasn't much training. And I feel like the pieces of the role, and again, this is related, I think, very much so to parenting and their role. Um, it's more deliberate. There's more professional development. It is much less a role that you can step into. I hope most schools don't still do it this way and say, like, go figure it out. And oh, I didn't tell you you're responsible for advisory. And then we're going to have random sit down to lunch in the dining hall to randomize the students every few weeks. That it really is about community building. Most schools are weaving, and I'm going to bring up something you're much more a specialist in than I am, but certainly most schools are incorporating pieces of restorative justice in their discipline processes. Like that's a significantly different way of talking about discipline, and in most cases enacting it.
Yeah, and
So
just operating in general, right? Because I think that really
operating in
just,
general at the school.
yeah, it really kind of changes the community as a whole if done. I wouldn't say done correctly, but if done with some intent, like because you want it to just not just be about the discipline process and how you frame things with regards to discipline, but how you build relationships across the community. So with that said, building relationships comes sometimes with parent phone calls, right? Sometimes you've got to call some parents and build some relationships, and sometimes those relationships start and they're not on the most positive terms, right? And that can be really hard. This whole podcast topic came about because we had a discussion earlier with a dean who was dreading a phone call and did not want to have to, kind of go through those steps. But, we really need to think about both sides of it, right? Not just coming from the dean side, but also coming from the parent side. And so that's what we really want to talk about today. So, Wendy, let's maybe just start talking about, kind of the parents. And, parenting is different these days. There's a lot more anxiety. There's a lot more that people feel like is at stake than maybe than our parents thought, when we were growing up. And so, how do you think that's changed how families interact with schools?
I think it has changed pretty profoundly. I think in general, parents are much more involved in their kids' high school education, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In some ways, it's a very healthy, positive thing, and schools should encourage parental involvement. I think the difference is um, there's been a lot of information lately
Yeah.
about parenting, and I think it's worth mentioning the daily podcast. The parents are not all right.
Yeah.
The U.S. Surgeon General's report about the mental health crisis of parents these days across the spectrum, not just in independent schools. Um, and so we get, when we make this parent phone call or when we even interact with parents, a lot of this anxiety because they have so much invested in their kids. And many parents, it's typically moms still, have given up careers and studying being a parent. This is another difference, that you can be an expert on parenting as a parent, whereas I think our parents sort of were parenting, but they didn't see it as such a critical role.
Right.
So books, podcasts, um, there's a competitive nature. There's this sense that there are only a certain number of spots at the top 50 universities. And so if your kid gets in, then my kid isn't going to. A scarcity of resources and safety concerns and the state of the world. So parents are very anxious. And I think everybody understands anxiety.
Yes.
Parental anxiety is, it's an impulse. It's not really an intellectual exercise. That's why we call it the mama or papa bear grizzly, an attacking bear
Yeah.
coming at you. And so I later, maybe we'll get to this. I think we can suggest when we work with parents, I also, in addition to building relationships, positive relationships with parents, is a little bit of parent education, and kind of reassurance. In addition to being anxious, parents are feeling isolated too, because there is less and less gathering at community organizations, at religious organizations, and because often the family schedule is so busy, and we really see this in our independent schools. So, one plug for relationships is to develop relationships with kids and parents before you have to make the phone call. That is the ideal, and it is not always possible. I have had parents come up to me at graduation and say, "Oh, thank goodness I've never met you. I'm so and so."
That's also nice, but also really never you didn't ever want to meet me. I'm kind of a nice person, but I do want to just go back to a couple of things that you said, Wendy. One is that there's so much information out there now. And so, just like the students are, kind of inundated with things on social media, so are adults. And, you can spend all your time kind of going down rabbit holes about, what your kids should or shouldn't be doing, what scores they should be getting, what schools are the best. And then there is the peer component that we haven't talked about. Keeping up with the Joneses has always been a thing, but I think even more now, it's heightened. And people really feel like, well, oh, your child's getting extra tutoring 3 days a week. Oh, I'm not doing that. Am I a bad parent? Is my kid lacking or is my kid behind? And so we have to throw that piece in there as well, too, for people just trying to feel like they are doing right by their kid and managing all of the pieces that they're supposed to be managing, whether it's in sports and like how many teams is your child on? Are they on the travel team or they're just on the school team? Like, are they getting extra coaching? All the things that are out there now that in a lot of ways can be positive, as, additions and available to help enhance students' lives, but also can be a detriment and a source of stress and anxiety. And so thinking about that angle and how, when I say parents coming in hot, when they receive a call from the dean, they don't even know the reason sometimes, initially. And so that anxiety, thinking about, well, all of this money or work that I put in this child, and now I'm getting a call from the dean. Yes, the stress level gets way way high before the conversation even starts. So let's talk a little bit about how deans can prepare for these calls, because we want to give people some tools, right? We want to talk and let people know that there are ways to kind of minimize the anxiety or stress going into these calls, and give people some tools to be able to do that. So I think what you need to do first is really just before you even decide to make the call, right? Check yourself. How are you doing? At what state are you coming into this call? Like, are you rushing in to make this call because you need to check it off a list? Or someone is like, you got to call this parent right now? Or do you have a moment? To kind of say, all right, I know I need to make this call. I know this is going to be a stressful call to make. Have I had something to eat today? Have I had water? Am I dehydrated? Did I have a stressful night, or am I coming from another stressful conversation? Take a moment to just kind of pause, because how you approach the situation, they're also reading your energy, right? So you want to make sure that you're coming in with the energy that you want them to have, not the energy that you are trying to kind of deflect from.
That's key. And I think if you can give parents a heads up, this can be a double-edged sword, but it also can help maybe to send an email and say, I'm going to reach out to you at some point today, and here's what it's about. And I think those first few minutes are really key to remain calm, exactly as you said, Bridget, and very succinctly and factually outline the purpose of the call. And if you can say something positive about the kid, and I don't mean that the way it sounded, you can say something positive about every student, but
Absolutely.
an authentically positive thing that doesn't sound like a platitude for what you're about to say.
Sure.
That goes a long way. And so I'm talking about this specific thing, and sometimes the specific thing is really just too many tardies, and they have to have a detention. We don't typically call home for a detention, but these days parents call us when their kids get detention, and you can put it in the parameters of how big a deal it is. It's a delicate dance, because you want to be clear enough with the parent about how much trouble their kid is in without freaking them out.
Right.
But sometimes they need to hear, because if it is a quite serious situation, it would be disingenuous to
Yeah.
just say,
Sugarcoat it. Yeah.
and they did such a great job in the soccer game. So to think about that, and before the phone call, to think about what the best possible outcome is. And typically the best possible outcome is just that the parent understand the situation. What we would love is for them to say, gosh, I feel such a wonderful and strong positive partnership with you. I'm so glad I went to the school. But you just want them to understand um, what happened and sort of where it fits in the spectrum. That's the beginning. And the emotion causes a lot of stuff to happen. And sometimes parents with that high level of anxiety say things that probably they later regret. I've had parents call me back and apologize, and even sometimes say you were right, which is, I mean, that's not why we do it, but
Right.
um, and the other thing I think is that's important to listen empathetically and approach with curiosity. And there's often quite a bit of deflecting. Well, my kid is not the only kid who's out of dress, or my kid is not the only one. Um, I don't know,
Fill in
leaving
the
the blanket,
blank. Yeah. I mean,
which is a very valid point. And so, but that's not what we're talking about today. Or no, I know that the person who busted them has never really liked them. They have a target on their back, which kids feel like, and you can say, I'm so sorry they feel that way, and I would love to hear more about that later, but I just want to make sure we're clear about this thing and stick to the facts. And then um, I think to have an end, we talked about having an end goal in mind before you have the call, to have an idea of sort of how long the phone call is going to go, which is We're not always in control of that.
Right.
But to have an end time and be sure that you can wrap it up so it doesn't just unravel and not have a formal conclusion. So, like a recap,
Mm-hmm.
or here's the follow up we agreed upon.
Yep.
Um,
But also not to end abruptly too. So you don't want to have one of those calls where you realize that you've gone over the time that you had allotted for that phone call and you have to move on to something else. Because
right,
as you know, everyone knows, but kind of don't, might not think about in the moment is that your child's not the only person at the school. So there are other things that are happening and other things that you have to attend to. There are two points that I want to just go back to briefly that you talked about. The listening piece, which is super important, and not listening to respond, but actually listening, because that is really important. There may be some cues that you can pick up on from what the parent is saying that can inform how you continue the conversation. So, really listening is super important. And, the part about kind of building some empathy and fostering connection with the person. And sometimes you don't have a ton of time to be able to do that, but you want to just try as best that you can. And so when you talked about, like, saying something positive about their child, we do want to lead with strengths. And that's something, I've been talking about a little bit about lately, especially when thinking about neurodiversity, because we always kind of lead with what people can't do. And granted, this phone call may or may not be a very positive one, but you still want to lead with something that is positive about the student and not something that's kind of superficial. Oh, he wore a nice red shirt today. No, we need to
right.
go something a little bit deeper than that. But I just wanted to kind of pick back up and build on that, because building empathy and fostering connection is what you want to try and do in these instances. It may not always be possible, but you at least want to make an attempt at that. So, you've already said a couple of things already, and how we start the conversation, because, starting on a positive note, or at least, making the attempt to, is half the battle, and what your energy is coming in, and not starting out with, your child did X, may not be the best place to start the conversation. But also think about how you navigate that conversation once you're in it. Staying curious, and you already said that word already today, and I think we'll can use that word several times in this conversation. But staying calm and staying curious, what that means is making sure that you're not matching the energy of the person on the other side if they are starting to get ramped up, because that anxiety is high. They're not sure what's happening, and so they're bringing all the things in. They may have, three other kids that they're managing and other things in their life that are stressful, and so, like I said, they're coming in hot, right? And so you can't match that energy. And sometimes it's hard not to if they come in and they're accusing you of not liking their child or not being fair or things that are really personal and can be hurtful. We have to still deal with the facts, and being able to deliver those facts in a way that's calm is really important, even when everything around you is not calm. So staying calm and staying curious is so important. But also acknowledging their experience. If they've had some experiences that haven't been so positive, we don't want to discount that. We don't want to poo-poo it or like be dismissive of it. Let them express their concerns there, and if there are things that you can do in the moment that can quickly kind of alleviate their concerns or acknowledge their concerns, or if there's something that you say, I would love, like you said earlier, to talk about this at another juncture, but right now we need to deal with this particular issue at hand, still acknowledges kind of where they are and the fact that they had some other concerns as well. And
Mhm.
again, like I said, sticking to the facts. We don't want to get into, how you're feeling, how they're feeling. Their feelings are important. I'm not saying that feelings aren't valid, because they certainly are, but we still have to stick to the facts. And, we get emotional when talking about our children and the people that are close to us and people that we love. And that's natural. That is a natural, normal human response. And we should expect that. But at the same time, our job is to navigate this situation and deal with the facts at hand, and relay information that's important, and come to a hope, a conclusion that has us both on the same page. So, what do we do when parents start to kind of ramp up and are kind of being quote unquote difficult? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to what we talked about in the
Uh-huh.
beginning, and that is that you are ideally approaching this phone call in a state of um, somewhat calm. Because sometimes these comments can trigger you. And I used to have there was an article I kept by my desk that a long time administrator said, let those words roll off you like water off a duck. Now, I don't want to discount the validation. It's so important to validate them.
Absolutely.
Uh, all the time, but even more so when they're at this high state of anxiety. I hear you. I hear you. I'm not sure what I can do about it right now, but I hear you. And those comments that on the days when we are, this is the fourth phone call, or you have to run to a meeting where you just feel agitated. Let's not say triggered, agitated. That's really when it's time to pay attention, because they're suffering, and we need to it's not really our responsibility to manage the suffering, but we need to manage it enough so that we can get the message across. And um, so I think validating and asking a follow-up question, your point, Bridget, about listening, and not getting defensive. It's everybody, I'm sure, who's listening is nodding and saying, well, of course I don't get defensive on those phone calls. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard. And there was one suggestion you made in a previous conversation we had, Bridget, that if you anticipate a difficult parent phone conversation, maybe you can practice with a colleague,
Yep.
especially a colleague who might kind of be able to role play back what a stressed out parent might sound like, and that can help you kind of manage it, because you do want to stay engaged and involved with the parent. At the same time, you're moving your own personality away and just saying it's really about the student. It's the parent on one side and the dean on the other, and the shared goal is the development of the child.
Right.
And I think later we'll talk about how to wrap up the call, but it's important to keep that in mind, that we are trying to parent. If the student will do much better if the parent and the dean are somewhat aligned,
Absolutely.
because we
Absolutely.
do share the same goal.
Yep.
I mean, we
We
approach it really
we do share the same goal of giving the students the best support and education that they can receive. So I'm going to kind of break for a question for you, Wendy. You've been on both sides of the parent phone call, as a dean making these calls and as a parent receiving them. Can you share a moment when your experience as a parent transformed how you approach these conversations as a dean?
well. Yes, I stand before you very humbly. Very, very humbly, but it did transform me, because I think that's when I started to understand. So our middle child is uh, their strength is academics. Should be getting straight A's. Good memory, good thinker, creative, loves learning, curious. So you don't think I think they're perfect. Social skills were much less strong. So this is their thing, doing well in school. And as a freshman at a school where my lifetime partner and I teach, right? So we know they got a C minus on their English paper. And I think we got word from the school, uh, a low grade. And that night, my husband and I got to talking, and we were like, we knew this faculty member never liked us. Taking it out on our kid. We went there. We just went there. And irrational, emotional. It's this. We were surprised, very disappointed, and instead of being disappointed in our kid, we went right for the teacher. I really am kind of embarrassed to tell this story. So the next day, we asked our kid. We heard about this English paper. Can we take a look at it? And Bridget, it was a C minus paper. Had purple writing all over it, and it was so humbling. But what it did was help me understand that emotion because I was dean of students then, and ninth grade transition is something I've always been passionate about. I've spoken to parents about how to engage with us. We're on the same side. We want what's best for your kid, and I fell into both of us did the parent grizzly bear trap, and so I think it just helped me empathize a little bit. And sometimes, if there is time, I think it's good to wait and let the parents settle down a little bit because when you're here, I mean, it is irrational. I was there.
Yeah, I'm trying to take that temperature down, right?
Mine-
But lessons learned, like we're not perfect, right? And so that's another thing that we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of post call things that you can do if you don't feel like the call went the way it should. But let's just talk about wrapping up the phone call to begin with. Cause so the thing that you want to make sure that you do with parents is summarize the key points, summarize the call at the end to make sure that they heard what you said. Because sometimes, again, when you're in that high temperature, you're not really processing what's happening. And so you want to make sure they have an understanding of why
Mhm.
you called and kind of what the next steps are. And restate any key points that you feel like should be done there. You also want to thank the parent for their time and for listening to what you had to say, and thank them for entrusting their child to you, because you're taking care of their child for 8 or plus hours of the day, and so you want to thank the parent for that. But also leave some space to circle back. Make sure the parent knows that if they have any concerns, anything that happens in the interim before another follow up, to feel free to call you back. Or if they think of a question or have something that they want to kind of share or with you about, to leave that door open for parents so that they feel like they can call you and not just feel like, well, I had the call, but then I don't feel like I can, call them back because it was just it was a little uncomfortable. So make sure that you kind of leave that door cracked so that parents can call you back with additional information, insights, or just kind of have a conversation themselves, because it's super important to be able to establish those relationships. Right? That's what we want to do. That's the ultimate goal, is to have relationships with both students and parents, so that when tough times come, and they will, that we'll be
Mhm.
able to deal with those in a fashion that suits everyone that's involved. So after the phone call, you hang up the phone, you're like, oh my gosh. Whew, first of all, you did it, right? And so sometimes we don't even give ourselves credit for that, because
Right.
sometimes these calls are really difficult and we feel like, okay, check the box and kind of go on about our day. But there is something to be said about taking a little time to kind of debrief and process what happened, especially if it was a particularly difficult phone call. If it wasn't a difficult phone call, then maybe not. Maybe you do check the box off and go on about your day. But if it was a particularly hard one, I don't think we give ourselves enough time and grace to take care of ourselves after something that was particularly difficult. So you need to acknowledge your emotions. We don't feel like we should be having emotions, or sometimes we have too many emotions, right? And so we need to make sure that we kind of balance that out. And, finding a trusted colleague on campus, or, another dean that you've commiserated with is a good place to start. Debriefing that phone call is important. And if you can't debrief with someone in the moment, maybe you journal about it. And I know that that's not something I kind of a popular or practical approach, but I think it does. You need to release what has happened. And so sometimes just writing down what happened and how you felt about it can be a release enough if you have other things to do kind of right after that particular phone call. So kind of getting that out there. And think about areas of how you can improve or what you can do differently the next time, because we know, unfortunately, it's not just one difficult phone call you're going to have. There are going to be several. And you need to, once you exercise that muscle, there'll be some things that you probably naturally do differently, but you have to exercise that muscle, right, for it to get stronger. And so thinking about things you want to do differently the next time is good. Don't beat yourself up about what happened, but being, just thinking about it, critically in a way that, can bring some positive pieces out for you to do the next time. Also, what's super important is to know that you can actually call someone back, right? It's not like once you make the first phone call that you can never kind of go back and retrace your steps. If you feel like one, there was some information that you wanted to convey that you didn't, or two, if the conversation didn't go as you had hoped and didn't end in a way that you would have liked. And so give yourself the space or the opportunity, the grace to be able to call someone back. Super important to be able to know that you can do that. Give yourself that opportunity to be able to do so. And you never know. The parent might feel that way as well. I'm like, that didn't go well, but do I call them back? Can I call them back? What do I say? And so you can maybe initiate that conversation.
Yeah. I would add um, two pieces, just listening to Bridget,
Mm-hmm.
that some of the deepest relationships I had with students and parents did come after a dreaded phone call.
Yep.
Not always, but you get beyond the superficial and you're really talking about their child. And if they don't appreciate it in the moment of the phone call, I think this is why all this stuff you're talking about, thinking how to end the call and circling back if you want, because you will see this parent again around on campus and definitely their child, and you want the relationship to keep developing.
Right.
And so I would say a a difficult phone call can sometimes strengthen the relationship. And the second thing, a little different, that you made me think of is I try to end those phone calls acknowledging how difficult it is to parent an adolescent, because it is
It
truly difficult.
certainly is. Absolutely. Even more
And
so
it,
now.
feeling anxious is feeling a little shame or embarrassment, especially in our schools. If it's a well connected parent, they often, one of the first questions is sort of, well, who
Who
else
else
knows about
knows?
it? Right? And so just to acknowledge, like, that we appreciate um, how difficult it is to raise an adolescent. And I think to reiterate with them that we are working together on this positive partnership, which ultimately serves their kid better. It doesn't, I don't think the parents always see that until later.
Absolutely. And, also reflecting on the parent's perspective, like just thinking about also kind of what other things that they could be dealing with hidden or seeing that could, contribute to how they are responding in the moment and giving some parents grace in that way as well. I mean, like you said, it is so difficult to parent these days. There's so many things that are happening, social media, just the climate of our world in general, not even just our country in particular, really is brings about stress and anxiety on people, and so we don't know what they're dealing with when they are at home and closed doors, or what they're bringing with them in terms of, baggage from something else that has happened. And so we want to make sure that we keep that in mind and don't just assume. We talked about earlier being curious. Don't assume that a parent's just being difficult or just being entitled or just being dismissive or divisive. There could be some other things that are contributing to that. And so I don't think we
Yeah.
talk about that piece enough, because it's easier to say, oh, that parent's just so rude, like they're just
Yeah.
so X fill in the blank, and there could be some other reasons why, and so we need to be a little bit more sympathetic to that, for sure.
And if we do leave ourselves open, we sometimes get that information
Hmm.
in the phone
Yeah, if you're
call. That
curious, right?
would be another thing
If
to
you're
be prepared
curious.
for.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the resources, because we you mentioned the Parents Are Not All Right podcast, which I listened to as well. That was by The Daily, great podcast to listen to for parents and for student life professionals to just kind of see kind of the landscape and what people are saying. One of the things that you brought up to me, Wendy, that I've been talking about ever since is this whole notion now of the lighthouse parent. And that's actually a positive one because we've talked about the helicopter parent and the snowplow parent. And I actually had never heard of the ghost parent, but you can you know what that means by the term. But the
Right.
lighthouse parent I find very interesting. And so there's an article on that in the Atlantic about, being kind of a beacon of light for your child and like highlighting the places where they might, hit a rock, but otherwise just kind of standing at your post, right? And letting your child kind of figure it out and go through the highs and the lows and the bumps and the bruises that is life and growing up so that when they do face difficulties, one, they know that you're there. But two, give them some sort of agency to start to be able to handle those things themselves so that when they become adults, their first bout with something that's not positive does not flatten them completely, right? You also mentioned sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no. I think they cannot develop the skills to cope with life's difficulties. And we all know as adults, like life is unpredictable and can be hard, and we don't often talk about it. They that's the only way they learn the skills, like you said, to fall down and then very much so like the toddlers. There's this thing, the toddler looks at you if they fall and scrape their
Right.
hair to see like
How
how
should I be responding?
and I think teenagers now, I've worked with a couple kids who said who were had little bumps, and then they say, "Oh, I'm sure my mom's really freaking out about this now." And I just feel like, wait, you're not freaking out, but your mom is. That's kind of an interesting thing. So the lighthouse keeps their kids absolutely safe. But you're right, it's rooted. It doesn't follow them everywhere or hover or stick to them or those obstacles are for embracing, especially in our schools, because we have all these structures to help them. What is scarier to me is these behaviors not really being developed, and these kids go to university
Yeah,
or try to get a job, and then they haven't developed the skills
they
or
haven't. And you
tools.
still have parents who are calling the job saying, my kid can't come to work today. And I'm like, oof, that's tricky.
Yes.
So,
So
uh,
Lighthouse is the new
Lighthouse is
parent.
the way we want to go, right? And so you also mentioned earlier the U.S. Surgeon General's report, and they've, interesting. They put out some interesting things in the last 5 to 7 years. The one about loneliness, but also this one about parenting and how difficult it is to parent. And so it's a real thing. It's not some sort of kind of mirage or thing that we think is out there. Parenting is very difficult, and so difficult that the U.S. Surgeon General decided to talk about it a little bit. So I think that's worth at least kind of getting the summary from there. And then lastly, from NAIS, National Association of Independent Schools, Dr. Michael Thompson and Dr. Rob Evans, Hopes and Fears and Working with Today's Independent School Parents is might be another read that you might be interested in. So just some recommended resources for you all as we kind of think about wrapping up. So, Wendy, like this, I love this conversation, and I could go on forever. But I think the way we should wrap up is just talking about some takeaways. So, you want to give deans and student life professionals some takeaways as we kind of wrap up the call today, or the
Sure,
podcast.
sure, sure. I think the first takeaway is, as Bridget, you kicked it out, some self reflection and making sure you're in a place to engage with a parent in a way that um, you have taken care of yourself enough so that you have energy to kind of take care of the parent. Um, and to really focus on the call and what the best possible outcome could be. And you want to look at it positively, because the positive is that the parent feels connected to you and they understand. Um, and I think a little investigation into the life of Bridget, you mentioned all those resources of a parent right now. And some of you may very well be parenting an adolescent in your very own school now. We focus a lot on the anxiety and stress of what it's like to be a teenager and isolation. And what we're hearing now is that this is how parents feel, and they need to know they matter at our schools and they have a role to play and that we can partner. And then I just think uh, the ending of the call, which is psychologically just good for everybody, to wrap it up. Here, I am not saying your kid is terrible. I'm saying, this behavior is not in alignment with our school, and we still love your kid, and here's what's still wonderful about them, but here's what we want to do to help them move along and develop this area, is really how we want to say it. I think somebody told me this once when one of my kids was in 6th grade. You have this feeling your kid the best, and they said, well, that's true, but we know 6th graders the best. So we know high school deans and all student life offices, the whole faculty know teenagers well, and parents know their kid very well. So it is true. Sometimes we know them in different ways, but choose when you share that. So that's why this partnership is key. And then I think the final step, which is often we don't have time for, is just however many minutes after the call, after you've hung up, to take a deep breath and validate yourself, and give yourself constructive criticism if you need it, and share it with somebody else that you trust, because everybody will have been through something similar, not exactly the same. And you need to go about, you've got, like Bridget said, there are 400 other kids that need your positive energy and focus. So to allow yourself some time to kind of recover and prepare for the next meeting or whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was awesome, Wendy. So there are two things I just want to kind of add to that. You kind of said them, but I want to just reinforce. Separating the deed from the doer, right? I think we don't do that enough, and saying, yeah, your child has done something that's not right. That doesn't mean that they're a bad person. They just did something that is not right, and there are consequences for that, right? But also separating the deed from the doer in terms of the parents as well, and keeping that level of professionalism and that emotion out of the conversation, even though their emotions are running high, and remembering that their emotions are running high because you are talking about their child. You are responsible for hundreds of children, but now you are talking in particular to someone about their child, and so oftentimes emotions will run high, and so we have to account for that. But we cannot lose our professionalism in that moment. We have to stay calm. And so just wanted to say those two things as we wrap up today. As always, Wendy, it's such a breath of fresh air to be able to chat with you. I so appreciate all the years you've supported the Roundtable, and thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. Wendy sometimes will join us with office hours, so if you want to see her again, you can perhaps see her there. But as we close today, we just want to remind everyone to give yourself a little grace on both sides, and take care of yourselves. And so with that said, thank you so much. And this is a wrap for the Dean's Roundtable podcast.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dean's Roundtable podcast series. If you are a student life professional looking for regular support, look no further than the Dean's Roundtable online community platform, where K-12 leaders share resources, grow their network, and get 24/7 professional support. Also, be sure to check out our monthly Dean's Roundtable office hours, where we tackle real challenges together in real time. Links to join both are in the episode description. Find all the details at deansroundtable.org. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Wendy Skinner. Produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund, and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.